Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the Expanse Season 2, Episode 9, The Weeping Somnambulist. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of the Expanse, so I'll have to start off with a spoiler warning for the Expanse up to Season 2, Episode 9. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So this was a pretty well executed episode. Not the most exciting of the season, but I will say this story is starting to really pick up. I didn't get a chance to review last week's episode, but I have to say that was probably my least favorite episode of the season so far. The main issue I had with it is how sudden Fred Johnson turned on Holden and the others after everything they've been through together and everything they've done for them. Not to mention that he just saved his life like a few seconds ago. I found it a bit hard to swallow, and it felt more like a convenient plot point that the show didn't actually earn. However, is not to say I didn't like last week's episode, as this whole season has been amazing. Just comparatively speaking, it wasn't quite as amazing as the rest of the season. This week's episode, however, I feel was a huge improvement. Even though it's mostly building the story for the future episode, it does an amazing job at doing it. So let's start with the Holden storyline. In last week's episode, we were introduced to Prax, or Dr. Ming, whose storyline was the best thing about that episode, particularly the tragic way his friend was killed just for being an inner, as they called him. And in this episode, he tries to send a message to her family, and it was really heartbreaking, particularly how he lied about how she actually died. And it was frustrating that they wouldn't let him send the message, but it appears that they had good reason. Overall, I like the introduction of this character to the storyline, and it's interesting that Amos was straight with him and told him about the proto-molecule, and this quest to find Dr. Strickland is pretty interesting, as he's obviously connected with Protogen somehow, so yes, it's very fascinating. But this episode in particular focuses more on the supply freighter that Holden and the others would use to get to Ganymede, and this was used quite nicely as well. As in the opening scene with the Martian soldiers who boarded their freighter and started acting like dicks, I was actually quite surprised when it was revealed it was Holden and Amos. We know that what Holden and Amos are doing is very important and could save millions of lives, but it was interesting seeing it from the perspective of the innocent freighter runners who are just trying to deliver much needed supplies. They don't know anything of what Holden and the others are about, so to them they do come off as the bad guys forcing themselves on their ship. And of course this leads to tragedy when their ship and all their much needed emergency supplies come under threat by those who would steal them. Holden and the others help by stopping the would-be robbers, but in the process gets one of the freighter runners killed. And the surviving one was very understandably upset and didn't care what Holden and the others wanted. You know, granted, they were simply trying to help, and had they not intervened, the freighter runners might have died anyway. But it doesn't change that they got one of them killed. So this was quite a powerful scene that shows no matter how good Holden's intentions are, and how much good they ultimately accomplish, they still inadvertently can cause harm along the way. And to that freighter captain, they're just as bad as the villains. And that's the one thing that makes this show so great, the dynamic three-dimensional storytelling that tells things from multiple angles. So we're introduced to another storyline on the research ship near Venus, studying the remains of Eros. So this storyline involves a character we only met very briefly before, a scientist by the name of Dr. Aturbi, if I'm pronouncing that right, who we know has a connection to Avasarala and is her inside man, as she puts it. It's a shame we haven't gotten to know this character all that much yet, but that's okay. I'm sure we'll get to know him more soon. He seems like a really interesting character, as he seems to believe that whatever took over Eros could be extraterrestrial in origins, and unlike most of the other Earthers, is more open-minded to those extraterrestrial or extrasolar, as they refer to them, possibilities. And the ending revelation that there's some other environment where Eros crashed into, isn't really a surprise to me, as I knew Eros wouldn't just disappear, because Julie Mount talked about work that the protomolecule had to do, and going to Venus wasn't, suicide for it. It was a way for it to continue its work. What exactly this work is still isn't clear, but what is clear is that Eros and the protomolecule wouldn't just disappear and be destroyed. But now let me get to my favorite part of the episode, the Earth and Mars negotiations on Earth. This was amazing. From finally seeing Earth and Mars officials sit in a room and try to negotiate a peace, to seeing Bobby Draper visit Earth for the first time and how easily she adjusted to it when many of her fellow Martians were having such a tough time with the gravity and the sunlight. And of course, seeing Draper and Avasarala's storylines come together was really interesting. So when Draper gave her testimony, you could tell that Avasarala saw right through the bullshit story that the Martian military ordered her to say. And she could tell that she was ordered to say this. It was interesting that they blamed it all on that one soldier that was from Earth. It does make the time we spent with them, learning to know her, group, worthwhile, as we saw firsthand her relationship with him, and so you could tell how devastated she was when they blamed everything on him. I could see why they did it. As Avasarala pointed out, he made the perfect scapegoat. But their mistake was not telling Draper about this beforehand, and she was very noticeably upset when they blamed him for it, and you better believe Avasarala noticed this. This is part of what makes her so great. While the other, UN officials remained oblivious, Avasarala noticed every little detail, and she saw right through this convenient lie that the Martians made up in order to keep the peace. So the scene where Avasarala insists on speaking to Draper was absolutely amazing, and I was waiting for her to say that because I knew she would, because she could tell that Draper was lying and moreover wasn't happy about doing so and was just dying to tell the truth. So it was fascinating how Avasarala knew exactly how to get her to talk. In the part where she was chit-chatting away and the Martian ambassador was like, "Where are you going with this?" And then she was just like, "Wherever I goddamn like." It was such an amazing moment, such a great performance. I absolutely love this actor. And we got another great moment when she got the answer she wanted about an enemy who wasn't wearing a suit, and the colonel tried to step in, and she was just like, "Whoever the fuck you are, step back and let her finish." So amazing. The fear that Avasarala commands. God, I love this character. But it's interesting, when the ambassador then instructed a Draper to do as instructed, it was of course intended to appear that he was telling her to do as Avasarala instructed, but what he was really saying was reminding her to do as they instructed and tell the story that they wanted her to tell. So she then backtracked and went back to the song and dance about it being their fault, but by this point it was too late. Avasarala already heard what she wanted to hear, and she knew Draper was being strong-armed to tell a different story rather than what actually happened. So I do believe she is aware that there is a protomolecule on Ganymede, which will make things really interesting going forward. So I found it interesting that the Earthers kept talking like the Martians attacked them and kicked their asses, but from what I remember from the battle from the episode is that it seemed to me Mars got their asses kicked by Earth. We know now there was also the influence of the protomolecule, but thinking of the ship battle, it does make me wonder if there was more stealth ships from Pierre Mal's Protogen wing, because we know that he had access to this highly advanced stealth ships that could even destroy Martian ships, so it's not too far-fetched to think that he may have more and that they could have been at Ganymede ready to strike, or perhaps they're also at Venus keeping an eye on what's happening to the spot where Eros crashed, but we'll just have to see. So my rating for the Weeping Somnambulist out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. Nothing really earth-shattering in this episode. Has the Holden storyline is interesting but not mind-blowing, and mainly a build-up to what's to come. The negotiations on Earth, though, were absolutely fascinating, and I loved these scenes. It was so great to see Draper and Avasarala cross paths, and seeing the frustrations Draper has to deal with, as well as seeing Avasarala kick ass was amazing. I can never get enough kick-ass Avasarala moments. And I can't wait to see where this goes. And on a related subject, before I was under the mistaken impression that there was going to be only 10 episodes this season, just like season 1, but I found out that there will in fact be 13, which is great because it gives the show more time to build up to a great finale, which I have no doubt the show is capable of doing. I also heard that the show has been renewed for season 3, which is also fantastic news, as I've been so incredibly impressed by this season so far. So that's it for my review of The Weeping Somnambulist. Be sure to keep an eye out on my channel as I continue to review episodes of The Expanse, as well as doing many other videos on other shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Black Sails, The 100, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. Thanks a lot for watching.